Hi everybody, it's Rebecca Virginia, and today I'm going to be showing you some DIYs that you can use in your garden and some DIYs that bring the garden inside to you. Big thank you to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. The first DIY in today's video is a plant bloom grow hanger. I made this using Dollar Tree supplies and a little help on the lettering from my Cricut Joy. As the basis for our hanger, I am taking this Dollar Tree sign, and it is from the Thanksgiving time period, but they come out with these for every single season. There's some out now for Memorial Day, there were some out for Easter, so you can always find this hanging trio. And what I'm doing first is taking some black paint and just covering the entire sign. I also did sand off some of the glitter that was on there, but I'm just covering the sign in 2 coats of black paint. And I did put down some painter's tape because I really liked the dark brown ribbon and I wanted to keep it. So the painter's tape just helped make sure that I didn't get any black dots onto my brown ribbon. When this was dried, I was so impressed. I thought that this really did look like slate, especially with those jagged edges. I just thought this came out beautiful. And now I am taking some jute and wrapping it around the bottom of each of those blocks, and I wrapped it around 4 times. To secure the jute into place, I did add a little bit of hot glue to the jute and the back of the sign. Then it was time to start picking out some florals and arranging them on our sign. I loved the look of the daisies against the black backdrop, as well as this peach flower in the middle. I added a couple of sprigs of some greenery and a little bit of lavender, and I just loved how all of these looked against our black backdrop. The DIY can be done here, but to elevate it a little bit and add a little something extra, I decided to use my Cricut Joy. For this project, we're going to be using Smart Vinyl. This was the first time that I had ever used the Smart Vinyl, and I loved it. It's so awesome because it's one less product to buy because you don't need a mat when you're using the Smart Vinyl. The Smart Vinyl has a strong backing, and that takes the place of the cutting mat and how you're able to do all of this cutting without actually using the mat. But the Cricut Joy can still use regular vinyl. You can buy a Cricut Joy cutting mat, so don't worry and think that you can only use a Smart Vinyl with the Cricut. I ended up writing out, well really my Cricut ended up cutting out Plant Grow Bloom, and then I went ahead and placed those down onto my sign. If you want in-depth Cricut tutorials, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I wasn't sure if you'd rather just see the projects and what the Cricut can create, or if you wanted really in-depth tutorials, so I thought I would just show you really quickly how I burnished the words the Cricut cut out onto the transfer tape, and then use the transfer tape to, of course, transfer it down onto my sign. I'm using that little tool again to really press the vinyl words against my sign. And when I peeled away the transfer tape, all of the words were left behind. I love how this sign came out, and I think that you could display it in your home, but it would also look really cute on a patio or a porch. Our next DIY is a garden tool organizer, and it even has a little bucket that you could put some fresh picked flowers or some other gardening supplies in. I picked up this galvanized tin from the Dollar Tree, and I drilled 2 holes in the bottom of it with my electric drill, and then I'm taking some cup hooks and placing those in the holes. Then to keep my cup hooks in place, I didn't have anything to actually keep it in place so it wouldn't move around. So I took one of these erasers from the Dollar Tree and just kind of used it like a cork stopper on the sharp part of the hook, and it really did the trick. I put 2 of them on there and those hooks were not moving anywhere. If you have heavier tools, you might need something more stable, but for my Dollar Tree tools, this worked. Now to hold up our actual tool organizer or the bucket, I am taking some of this faux leather ribbon from the Dollar Tree and creating a handle. Then I took my hot glue gun and just hot glued the ribbon onto the back of the bucket. If you're going to be having heavier tools, the tools that I picked up were from the Dollar Tree and really light, then you might want to add some E6000 of this, but for me, the hot glue was just fine. Then to jazz up my Dollar Tree gardening tools, I decided to use some of this really pretty turquoise smart vinyl and my Cricut Joy. It actually matches the Cricut Joy perfectly, I'm just realizing that now. The Cricut Joy was able to cut out my words dig and rake, which I'm going to be placing on my tools, and the machine did this in less than 2 minutes. It works so fast, so it is great when you're trying to complete a project quickly. And there you can see the words are perfectly cut out. One thing to note with the smart vinyl is because it does have such a thick backing when you are transferring your words using your transfer tape, just make sure to burnish a little bit harder than normal. I found that if I just pressed a little bit harder, it came off really easy with the smart vinyl. I was just pressing a little bit too lightly at first. And I just used my fingers to transfer the vinyl onto my gardening tool. I just pressed down on the vinyl, and then when I peeled off the transfer tape, my words were left. As a final step, I'm taking a little bit of jute and weaving it through the hole in my gardening tools. That way they will hang perfectly down from my garden organizer. Let me know in the comments down below what you use to organize all of your gardening and yard work tools. I think this DIY might be my favorite one in the whole video. I started with plant labels and I was having so much fun that I added on a few additions to my galvanized watering can too. I'm starting off with my plant labels that I got in the gardening section at the Dollar Tree, and you could just leave them as is and write on them, but of course I had to craft them a little bit. So I took a baby pink colored paint and I'm just painting both sides of our plant labels. And I was so excited for this DIY because I'm not going to be handwriting anything. I am going to be using the marker and some of this smart label vinyl from Cricut, and I'm letting the Cricut Joy write out the words in a font that I only wish that I could handwrite. The Cricut Joy makes it really easy to change out your tools. All you have to do is unclamp. Then I took out my blade. Then I put in one of their Cricut Joy markers and I put the cap on the top of my marker. That way I didn't randomly lose my cap somewhere around my house. And then I just clamped it back in and it was ready to go. So I wanted to show you all a little bit more about the Cricut Design Space. My favorite part, I think, is that you can do it all from your phone. I have Design Space as an app on my device and there's Bluetooth, so I can just design and make crafts really quick and easy from inside the app. They also have so many projects available, so if you don't know where to start, I just searched labels and all of these came up. So I just picked a label that I liked best and added in my own words. And it was great because since this is label writable vinyl, the marker didn't smudge or anything. It wrote perfectly on the vinyl. And also I was kind of surprised because the second that it was done, I touched it and it still didn't smudge. Then it peels off just like a sticker. You don't have to worry about taking out your transfer tape and transferring it down. It just peels right off. It was so easy, just like putting down a sticker. And I couldn't help but also do a little craft on my galvanized watering can that I got from the Dollar Tree. So this time I decided to try the deluxe paper for the Cricut Joy. This is the first time I've used any of the paper. I've used vinyl before. I have myself that I bought on my own a Cricut Explore Air 2, so I'm a little bit more experienced in the vinyl, but I've never ventured into the paper, so I was curious how this would go. And you do have to put the paper down onto the Cricut Joy mat, but that was super easy. I just put it down, selected a word that I really liked in Design Space, and the font that I liked, and then the Cricut Joy went to work cutting it out. And since it was only one word, I think it took like 10 seconds. It was so fast. It just cut out the word perfectly for me. You can't really see it there, but you will in a moment. And I just weeded it out the same way that I would if this was a piece of vinyl. The only difference was instead of using transfer tape, I instead took my little spatula tool and just peeled the words from off of the backing so that it was like a sticker. And then I just picked up the word grow and I placed it down onto my galvanized watering can. I've said it before in other videos, and I think even in this one already, but my handwriting is not great, so I love that in this DIY, I was able to create plant labels that all had the same font, same size, and looked so professional and uniform. The last DIY in today's video is an Infusible Ink Pen tutorial, and just as a disclaimer, I will be using all Cricut supplies in this DIY and showing you how to create these adorable floral coasters. The first thing that we're going to do is draw out our design using the Cricut Joy. And I would recommend using the light grip mat if you have it, but I used the regular grip mat and it worked out just fine, so I wouldn't worry too much, but if you have an option, go with the light grip. Then I took some laser copy paper, and it's just plain old paper that I use with my printer, nothing special to it, and placed it down on the mat. Now what is going to be key to the transfer that we're doing is making sure you're using the Infusible ink pens. So I removed my blade and inserted in my Infusible ink pen in this dark purple shade. Then I pushed the mat into place, and the Cricut Joy did the rest of the work. It read my map and began to draw out my design. The reason I wanted to share this Infusible ink pen tutorial is because I was pretty intimidated by the whole infusible ink process, but it's actually really easy to do and not scary at all. This was my first time ever using a heat press or infusible ink, and spoiler, but the end result comes out pretty great, so if I can do it, so can you. If you're ever unsure of where to start or what kind of design or image you want, don't worry, Cricut Design Space has your back. I went in and didn't really know what I wanted to put on my coaster, so I just typed coaster into the search bar, and all of these gorgeous designs that other people have created already came up. So I didn't have to do any designing or anything. I just searched for a coaster I liked. I thought these florals went with my whole flower gardening theme of this video. Then I selected this one in particular and deleted the rest. Then selected go, and my Cricut Joy went to work drawing. Also, this is important. Make sure that you mirror your image. You want it to be basically backwards because this process is going to work like an iron-on. So definitely make sure that your mirror is turned on. Then I took my image off of my Cricut mat and grabbed my coaster blanks. These were fresh out of the package, but Cricut does recommend wiping it with a microfiber cloth before you put the image down. Next, you want to place your image face down onto the shiny top side of the coaster. Cricut recommends using heat-resistant tape, but I had never even heard or knew that there was heat-resistant tape, so I did some Googling and it said that you could use the blue painter's tape, and this did end up working. It melted a tiny bit on the backside, but if you're in a pinch and don't have any heat-resistant tape, this will work just fine. Now we're going to transfer our image onto our coaster using heat. And before we do that, I am putting 2 pieces of parchment paper over my heating pad, just so that the infusible ink doesn't transfer through onto my pad. Now this is an important step. You are going to take the coaster and put it face down. So you will not be applying the Cricut Easy Press onto the side with the paper. You're going to be putting it on the bottom side of the coaster. This is a really important step, and if you don't do this, then it is not going to apply properly. So definitely make sure you have it face down. Then I put a piece of parchment paper on top of the coaster. This is going to be a barrier between the coaster and the Easy Press. Cricut recommends using butcher paper, but I didn't have any, and parchment paper worked just fine. Cricut has a really handy heat guide on their website. All you have to do is tell Cricut what kind of heat press you're going to use. Mine was the Easy Press 2. Tell them what materials you're using, the coaster and the infusible ink pens, and it will tell you exactly how long and at what temperature that you need to heat your Cricut Easy Press. Once it makes that noise, it is ready to be used. So I just picked up the Easy Press and set it down on the coaster. The heat guide that I read on Cricut.com told me that I did not need to add any additional pressure, so I just left the Easy Press on top of the coaster and waited till the timer was up. This is a very important step. Once your timer has gone off, please wait. The coaster is going to be so hot. I just put my hand over it and I could feel the heat coming off that. So I actually waited about an hour until I felt that it was cool, and then I once again put my hand over it and just tested to make sure that it wasn't super hot still. And you can see I got excited because I was like, oh, I did need to put on this parchment paper. The infusible ink did go through one layer of the parchment paper, so now I understand why Cricut said that you should put something down. And I was so impressed and amazed by the magic of these infusible ink pens. This came on and it didn't have any texture like vinyl or an iron-on. It was completely smooth. I ended up loving these coasters so much that I went over to Cricut.com and bought a bunch more of coasters and infusible ink with my own money because I loved how these turned out. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.